Hi, my name is Raella Penta, and I'm here to share just a few very quick minutes explaining Kayden's Law. If you're in the United States, this is something that will likely affect your state if it hasn't already. I work with Heroes for Children's Rights, as well as Interference with Child Custody Coalition. Our goal is to empower parents and to help them learn how to advocate for not only their rights, but for making changes on a bigger scale in your own state. VAWA is Violence Against Women Act, and this was passed and reauthorized in the United States in 2022. What this act says is there is an increased funding for domestic violence and sexual assault services. It's directed $1 billion in a supplemental fund for domestic violence and sexual assault services throughout the American Rescue Plan in response to the pandemic, including $49.5 million for culturally specific community-based organizations that help survivors of historically marginalized communities access the services and support that they need. So this STOP grant does go on to continue, and the theory behind it sounds great. Unfortunately, it's not how it's playing out in each state. So Kayden's Law is a Title 15 of the Violence Against Women's Act, Reauthorization Act of 2022. The concern that VAWA places on curbing domestic violence and protecting children and victims of violence is both praiseworthy and necessary to prevent tragic cases as the murder of Kayden Mancuso, which was a Pennsylvania case of a child in a custody issue. The mother tried to enforce custodial interference, which is a law in every state, a felony in most, and has been for 50 years. And when the police refused to enforce this law, the abuse escalated, and eventually Kayden's father had murdered her. However, the stories behind Kayden's Law, the narrative has now been twisted, and now the law, you can go to kaydenslaw.info for amazing factual stories about not only that, but the UN issue. But in each state, there's a financial incentive. As the VAWA Act has said, you could get up to $25 million. In actuality, no grants have been granted yet, and the average number that's coming out is about $200,000. But the promise of big funds has had many states try to pass this law. We've been successful in Pennsylvania, Illinois, California, Maryland, and New York that this bill died. But in each state, the language that is coming out of it is not going to be helpful for any kind of child that is psychologically abused or alienated or dealing with any kind of parent-child contact problems. Some of the language in states, for example, in California, it's Peaky's Law in California. Right now it's in the Assembly, and it is SB 331. There is a line in it that says that you cannot remove a child from a parent unless they are physically or sexually abusive, which is obviously ignoring the category of children that are psychologically abused. And tragically, in California, 9% of children are psychologically abused, 7% are physically abused, and 5% are sexually abused. In Maryland, the bill that was filed and was pushed to be legislation and luckily did die said that parental alienation is invalid, unscientific, and not appropriate for any custody cases. Colorado just passed HB 1178. Tragically, this will be the first state that we will see the negative outcomes from this bill that excludes the acknowledgement of psychological abuse. This is a general flyer for each state, although, like I said, the language can be different in every state. It's not coming through in one package anymore. They're taking pieces out and submitting them under other bills to try to get them passed. The research is unreliable that it's based on. It's taking away judicial discretion. It's ignoring psychological concepts like attachments and bonds, including negative attachments and bonds. It's going to cut judges' discretion and keep children with abusers. So if you are in the United States, look for your laws. If you don't know how to do that, please reach out to us. That's what our organization is all about. We help parents learn their rights and advocate for them, and then you take that step to go bigger if they want. We've had some amazing legislation in Texas that we've been following the model that works. Claudio Valles has been the leader there, has done the legwork and found this law and said, why isn't this enforced? And there's been successful legislation there in terms of one with a civil penalty. And so we are helping other states just follow that path that works. And I know that I'm so grateful for being able to work with her and other amazing advocates like Julie. So you can reach us at facebook.com/enforceicc or heroesforchildrensrights.org. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your conference.
Good afternoon. My name is Julie Grayson, and I am honored to be able to be presenting at the PASG conference on advocacy effectiveness. I always like to start my presentations for advocacy with a quote or two. And today's quotes come from Gandhi. Gandhi said, "You never know where your actions will lead to, but if you don't do anything, they will lead you nowhere." And he also said, "Anger and intolerance are the enemies of correct understanding. The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. You must be the change you wish to see in the world." And in the arena of child custody, child welfare, parents and children's rights, in my view, there are two types of advocates. There are the targeted parent and children advocates, friends and family, and there are also the third parties and the professionals who try to advocate for the targeted parent and children, and certainly do what the standards in the States, similar internationally, best interests of children in individual cases. And hopefully their advocacy work will continue, and a lot of them do advocate within the community to effectuate societal change. I created a wheel. It's called the Advocacy Effectiveness Wheel for Targeted Children and Parents. And I break up all the different types of advocates and areas of advocacy that you can be involved in. And I always tell people when they become advocates that the strongest advocacy is picking areas where you know you have a strong skill set and you are able to effectively execute your position within the community. And this applies to both types of advocates. It's an acronym called BIF. I like to use it because it stands for Brief, Informative, Friendly Firm. Irrespective of what area on this wheel that you choose to advocate to, You have to be brief, informative, friendly, and firm. It's critically important that you speak in a way that you know people are listening and that you are cognizant of who your audience is and direct your arguments accordingly. As far as targeted parents, children, friends, and family, I always say first and foremost, you have to exercise tremendous self-care and self-advocacy. So what is self-advocacy? Okay. First and foremost, you have to center yourself. You have to be gentle with yourself and understand that the root of self-care is setting boundaries. This is hard stuff. And so you have to practice gratitude because there are things that anyone can find every day that they're grateful for to elevate their positive energy out into the world. You have to take back your power, okay? Beyond court situations, beyond your individual circumstances, beyond your advocacy organizations and agencies that you're dealing with as professionals. You can take back your power because you know your truth. Next, you have to recognize the parts of your life that you can take 100% control of, and you have to cultivate them. For example, your job, exercise, meditation, connecting with friends, extended family, colleagues. This self-care will help you advocate better. Next, you have to condition yourself to appear non-reactive. Alienating behaviors are expected, and alienators have long patterns of these toxic behaviors. Don't get caught in that finger trap. That is effective advocacy for targeted parents, children, friends, and family. Sometimes the disrespect is all the closure that you need in order to turn the page and be a successful advocate. You know, in the book Alice in Wonderland, I like this sentence that says, the secret, Alice, is to surround yourself with people who make your heart smile. It's then that you find Wonderland. And if you keep with this positive attitude, you will get to the other side and cross the finish line. Broken people can't be effective advocates. You have to remember, hurt people hurt others, but luckily healed people heal others. Enlightened people illuminate others. And remember, love always wins. More advocacy for targeted parents, children, and family and friends. It's critically important to know in this arena that the wrong professionals in your case are worse than worthless. And you have to advocate by finding the right professional. And when you surmise that someone is not the right professional, you fire them, or you don't retain them at all. And remember, if you're a parent, grandparent in a rejected position, know that you are your child and grandchild's best hope for a successful future. You also have to remember, if you're going into court on emotion, self-advocacy is making sure you bring in a witness. You bring in a witness, you know, if certain things are not taped, if they see something that hinders the integrity of the court system, this can be reported, okay? Advocates must have an expansive background, not only within their own cases, but to advocate effectively in the community. And what I mean by that is, if you look at the wheel, unfortunately, there are so many people that become involved in your individual cases as targeted children, parents, friends, and family. So let's go over them. Firstly, you've got mental health and medical professionals. Those consist of psychologists, clinical and forensic psychiatrists, therapists, social workers, all medical doctors. Then you have the next piece of this pie is the general public. That includes investigative journalists, social media influencers, policy and advocacy organizations, and child welfare nonprofits. The next critical piece of this pie is school personnel. That's superintendents, teachers, guidance counselors, nurses, coaches, school support staff. And again, remember, this works both ways. It's a communicative property. As a targeted parent, child, friend, and family, you can advocate and educate these people. And on the other side, these people have a duty to be able to professionally deal with these kinds of issues and advocate for the best interests of these children and recognize what a targeted parent looks like. The next slice is law enforcement, which includes police, sheriff's offices, law enforcement associations, and agencies. Then we have the legal category, consisting of attorneys, mediators, arbitrators, guardians ad litem, court-appointed experts and evaluators, prosecutors, and district attorneys. Then we have the judicial branch, ombudsman, judges, family division managers, trial court administrators, administrative officers of the courts, DV units, and CASA, court-appointed special advocates for children. Then the last two are legislative branch, local, state, federal, and their international equivalents, and the United Nations Human Rights Council. And then we have the executive branch, governor's offices, the international equivalents, Child Protective Services, which is in the US, DCPP, DIFUS, ACF, DHS, depending on what area of the country you live in. And remember, all of these components on this wheel, all of these disciplines and these players have to have a uniform system playbook for this to work. There needs to be omnibus training where all of these disciplines, all of these professionals can come together so they are singing off the same sheet of music to ultimately help targeted parents, targeted children, and families, parents and children that have broken bonds. Now I wanted to focus on the third parties and the professionals in these cases and how they can best be advocates. Again, BIF applies to them as well, brief, informative, friendly, firm, depending on who you are talking to. Next, court-appointed mental health professionals, okay? If you are retained as a mental health professional and you are writing reports, you have to understand that you will be called to testify to authenticate your reports. You will be on the stand, not necessarily only in family court. You might be there in civil on crossover issues. You might be in criminal court on crossover issues. If you are retained and for whatever reason you choose not to testify, or if you subpoenaed not to accept a subpoena, you are not a true advocate for these disenfranchised children, targeted parents, friends, and families. If you dodge subpoenas and if you commit at the beginning to be involved in cases, this hurts targeted children, parents, friends, and family terribly. Please opt out at the beginning if you cannot cross the line to help these families in this regard, for whatever reason. Next, mental health professionals who are reporting. There has to be swift and immediate action. That is effective advocacy. Time is of the essence in the alienating behavior cases that all of these third parties and professionals deal with. If you are writing a report to the court and you're taking 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months to do it, this hurts these families. Meaning, I understand these reports take a while to write, but the minute that a professional sees that one parent is a gatekeeper or breaking a bond, or you surmise breaking a bond between a parent and the other parent and child, or the alienating parent exhibits immediately hints of these behaviors, it's your duty to warn the targeted parent. It's your duty to report to the court and Child Protective Services. This is effective advocacy. And if you're not doing that, and unfortunately dragging your feet on these cases, this is ultimately hurting these families. If you are a mental health professional that is not trained in these kinds of subspecialties dealing with alienating behaviors in custody cases, step aside, opt out, make a referral of someone who is qualified to be doing this, or say, maybe I can revisit this case or another case at a later date when you get the proper training to do so. If you're an attorney and you want to be an effective advocate, I understand that attorneys have ethical responsibilities to zealously represent their clients. But if you're in court and you're dealing with these kinds of cases, you have a duty to report a judge in these cases that you surmise is violating the canon, the judicial canon. That is effective advocacy. Now, lastly, going back to the wheel, if you look at the outer perimeter of the graphic, advocacy effectiveness equals education, empowerment, action, and accountability. Everybody should be honest with themselves about their individual strengths and wheelhouse. Some people can be effective advocates for all of these different categories on my chart. Others feel that they might not have the skills or the background to do so. But whatever you feel you can do, understand that this is the most, or conceivably the most purpose-driven advocacy you will ever do in your lifetime. And it will affect society locally and around the world, because this is an omnipresent problem that we're dealing with parental alienation. On the lower left hand of my chart, I have my name. You can contact me by email at help@parentchildfocus.com if you need some specific information about advocacy or how to help, and I will respond expeditiously. I want to thank you for this opportunity to talk about advocacy effectiveness, and I wish all of you at this conference reunification with your individual families, reunification as professionals in helping the community at large, and we will go forward in strength. Thank you.